welcome to QI in my breeziest and most patronising bedside manner for a show that's all about illness, infection and injury. Joining me in casualty are the slightly indisposed Andy Hamilton. The disturbingly insidious Ben Goldacre. The seriously infectious Joe Brand. And the terminally ill-informed Alan Davis. And to tell you the truth, their buzzers don't sound so hot either. Andy goes... Ben goes... Joe goes... And Alan goes... And don't forget, of course, that you have your Nobody Knows jokers.
Nobody knows.
Yes, in this series there may well be a question to which the real answer is nobody knows. And if you can guess which question that is, you get extra points for playing your Nobody Knows jokers. Now, before we start, I'm afraid I'm going to have to ask you all to fill in this questionnaire that I've got for you. Oh. It's on the Epworth Sleepiness Scale. It's about, really, how likely you are to fall asleep under certain circumstances, and therefore whether or not you have a healthy sleep cycle. You're all concentrating very hard on it. Well, I'm glad you take that. Joe has fallen asleep.
Filling in questionnaires.
Yes, that's the one that makes you fall asleep.
Yeah.
That
Finished.
Have you really? Yeah. Well done. We won't go through them till the end, though. I'm very impressed.
I've always filled in questionnaires quickly. I think it's a problem I've always had. I think if you finish first, you get marks somehow.
Oh, how do you know whose they are? You better put your name on them, hadn't you?
Oh, who hasn't put their name on their work?
You're feeling more than usually like a schoolmaster.
Joe Brand.
It was... I feel that men fall asleep more somehow. Do you fall asleep in catnap during the day, afternoon?
Only during sex.
Oh.
So when you're watching sex or doing sex?
Either.
It is one of the afflictions of getting old, I fear, falling asleep. So, while you're sleeping, we'll be playing QI. And the first question is, why would you swallow a pill made of a poisonous metalloid? Yes.
Would it be because you got really pissed one night and then you woke up the next morning and realised you were next to Michael Winner in bed?
Well, oddly enough, until you got to that last point, one of the uses of that poisonous metalloid was as a morning-after pill, but its other use was for the other end of the body. It's a metalloid called antimony, and it's a poison. But it was popular in the Middle Ages as a pill, because it's very good for constipation. The weird thing about it is you'd make a pill of antimony, because it's metalloid, it'd be like... It would pass through the body. You would then rummage through your leavings and wash it and use it again.
Rummage through your leavings.
Wasn't quite sure how to put it.
I'm certainly going to use that again, though. I like that one a lot.
And these things would get handed on from father to son through generations. And they'd use the same one. Because it was so rare.
Father's leavings and his father's leavings.
This pill was good enough for your great-grandfather.
So that's the earliest example of a repeat prescription.
Yes. Very good.
Hundreds of years.
Absolutely. But the other use of it was an antimony cup, where you would pour wine into it overnight, when you'd had a large evening, and then in the morning you'd take the wine that had been soaked in this antimony cup, as it were, and it would make you vomit instantly. So it was used as an emetic. So it was just really...
So what is it? It's a naturally occurring...
Yes, it's an element.
And it's an irritant, presumably? Because there's a mnemonic for remembering laxatives, which is there are bulkers, lubricants, irritants, softeners and explosives. And explosives work like... they work like cholera. You've got to sort of stick them up your bum. That's
right.
Technical.
Or suppository, as we comedians say. Yes. So that's for a really serious case of being stuffed up.
Yeah, proper phosphate enema, rocket fuel.
Wow.
On a skateboard.
In ancient Egypt, there was a doctor whose specialised function was to administer enemas to the pharaoh. He was known as the Neru Pthuit, which literally translates as shepherd of the anus. It's an official job, rather pleasing.
So with the crook, you mean?
It's obviously not a natural thing. Animals don't pump warm water up their arses, do they? It doesn't seem to happen in nature in any way that we know of. How did it come about?
Well, they are very popular with quacks. I think there's something quite attractive about how transgressive it is to squirt a lot of something up your bum that makes pretend doctors feel like real doctors. But there was a guy, well, John Harvey Kellogg, the man behind the man behind the cornflake.
Yes.
Yeah. So he had this this big kind of quack clinic that he ran, where the moment that you arrived, you had to make a visit to a man called the Rear Admiral, who would bend you over and fill you with fresh yoghurt, and then you would poo that out, and then you'd be ready to crack on with your detox.
And they would deal with your thrush at the same time.
What time's this show going out? Will people be...
Well, I mean, it is almost the most kind of basic fact about us all is that we poo. And also that we are, as we age, supposedly, we get more obsessed by it. I mean, it's sort of all you've got left, really, isn't it? And there are stories of nurses who get sent stools by grateful patients. You must have heard those stories, eh?
They're not necessarily grateful.
It's an expression of love.
No idea why, but that habit has followed me through into my comedy career.
There was a chap recently who tried to kill somebody by... he packed his anus with explosives, and it was a Middle East prince, I can't remember which one, but he showed up and went... And his plan was, shake the guy by the hand and then trigger it. But unfortunately, the body is very good at absorbing explosions. That's why, heroic acts where people jump onto hand grenades and stuff. So all that happened was he shook this prince by the hand, the bomb went off, and he just sort of bounced up in the air slightly and then jumped into his knees. And the prince, like any sort of royal, just went, very good.
Oh, dear. Well, that's antimony. As I say, antimony pills were quite literally passed down through the family. Now, placebos. Placebos are often administered in the shape of sugar pills. My question is, how do they work? Very good.
Nobody knows.
Now, you might want to question this thing.
Well, they do work.
They do work.
But nobody quite knows why.
What's extraordinary is not only do they work even when you tell someone it's a placebo. I mean, you obviously have studied the placebo effect more than most.
Mm-hmm. It's amazing. And I think the magic ingredient of the sugar pills is its belief and expectation. So, for example, we know that 4 sugar pills a day are a more effective treatment than 2 sugar pills a day.
Yes.
And we know that a saltwater injection is a more effective treatment than taking a sugar pill, not because the saltwater injection or a sugar pill does anything kind of physically to your body, but just because an injection feels like a much more dramatic...
Is it something to do with that you just feel you're being taken care of? There is some part of your body yields to the authority of an injection even more than to a pill.
Yeah. And, everything. Pacemakers start working before they've been switched on.
Yes. Yes, I've heard this. Or knee surgery as well. They've cut people's knees open and then sewn them up. And they've said they feel better, even though they've not actually done anything.
And that's kind of why it's important to do proper trials, because otherwise you'd be running around thinking that it was worth cutting people open and messing around with their heart. And actually it wasn't. It was just... The
intervention, the almost priest-like nature of the doctor, the faith that is reposed in them, and obviously that goes some way, I suppose, to explaining homeopathy, because a homeopathic pill is as inert as a sugar pill.
I know someone who was told by a health visitor to take arnica for a caesarean scar. And went and spoke to an obstetrician and said, "Now, is there any truth in that?" He said, "Well, the thing is with homeopathic medicine is there haven't really been proper clinical trials. But arnica is one that has been tested, and it has been found to have absolutely no effect whatsoever."
Homeopathy is a really good sort of teaching tool for evidence-based medicine, because the homeopaths' trials in general are so crudely rigged that they make extremely good sort of teaching examples.
So they're not double-blind randomised trials in the approved manner.
Either each individual trial has been done poorly, or what you get more commonly is cherry picking. So if you run 100 trials of something, then it's inevitable that maybe 5 of them will throw up positive results.
Yes.
And if you only cite the positive trials, then you can make it look as if your treatment works. And actually, I mean, the pharmaceutical industry are even bigger buggers for that, really, than the quacks, because it sort of matters more. And there are still no laws to stop people from hiding trial data, not meaningful laws.
This is the problem with, you see, people like me who are lazy, and I dare say you without being overdoing
Lazy?
it. But, no, I mean, when we read in a newspaper, studies show...
He's writing a novel under the desk.
No. I mean lazy in this sense. If I read studies show in some newspaper, you know, I kind of go, gosh, that study shows. But it takes someone like Ben who'll go, what's the study? Who conducted it? How many people were used? You know, they're never told that. That's basically the problem, isn't it?
But I mean, to be fair, I think this show is probably more guilty of that than anyone else. It's a very easy thing to fix. Because I think every news story or feature or TV show or anything that makes a reference to a piece of primary research should give a link to that piece of research so that people can go and see what the evidence was.
Yeah, indeed. Anyway, the placebo effect is undoubtedly incredibly powerful. On the other hand, there are drugs that are powerful too. If you inject someone with cyanide and say it's actually a sugar pill, they will die.
Yeah.
But as Andy rightly said, nobody really knows quite how the placebos work, but work they jolly well do. What kind of condition that astronauts suffer from is measured by the Garn scale. That's G-A-R-N.
Garn is what Steptoe used to say a lot.
Yes, indeed. Eliza Doolittle says Garn as well, doesn't she? Yeah. It's named after Senator Garn, who was a senator, who became an astronaut, and he suffered very particular from what most astronauts suffer from.
Depression?
No, seasickness, or at least travel sickness. It's really, really bad up there, apparently. There's a lot of vomiting. Which is not nice in weightlessness. So you take the pill.
Around the cabin.
Exactly. In fact...
They can't do that. Well, they've got a helmet on. You have to be...
Yeah. 47% of all the medication used by the shuttle astronauts was seasickness tablets. The sickest was Jake Garn in '85. And so after him, they used the Garn scale. A score of 1 Garn means you are completely incapacitated by sickness up there.
It's the right word, because it sounds like someone chucking up a bit, doesn't it?
It does. Do you know what causes seasickness, for example?
Is it going up and down on the sea?
Yes. That's the condition in which it happens.
Oh, you mean physically?
Yeah, why does it make one sick?
Sometimes I've felt unwell on a ship just from the throbbing of the engines. Not even the boat's not even moving about much.
Yes,
there's some sensation that's constant movement that starts to make things come up.
That sight of that would be...
It's a disconnect between the visual information and the sort of balance of information, isn't it?
Yes, that's right.
I'm at half a Garn at the moment.
Oh, you're just looking at that. Well, it is
Horizon.
Why don't birds get it when they're bobbing about on the surface? Why, they never seem to be
How do you
throwing
know
up.
they don't?
Well, yeah, that's true. Or, of course, maybe they just sort of evolved not to. But the bad things to do are going below deck for extended time period, reading a book, looking at a compass, doing detailed work, or staring at one point. It's helpful to stay in the fresh air, drink plenty of water, avoid fatty and spicy foods. They say that for everything. Everything.
You can't move for advice now. You turn on 5 Live and someone's always telling you, well, they've got an expert in because it's sunny today. What do you think we should do? Well, you want to watch out because you can get sunburns. So maybe apply cream or wear a hat. You could be seriously saying this on the radio? What are you doing?
Or do avoid fatty and spicy foods.
Don't jump out of the window if you're on the 10th floor.
That must be from the film of The Perfect Storm, I
That
suppose,
looks like a
isn't it?
film. I can't believe it. That'd be an exceptionally good photograph from
Yes.
another boat.
That's such a good point.
I'm holding... Hey, how did you hold that so still?
Anyway, yeah, that's the Garn scale. Almost half of all astronauts suffer from space sickness, it seems. What is intelligent falling? Joe Brand.
Is it when you see Michael Winner coming towards you? And you deliberately trip so that you can squash them? That would be intelligent falling.
A very good example.
You really got it into the Winster, haven't you?
I have.
Yeah.
Is it because he's not returning your calls, Joe? Is that what it is? Let go of
Take
it.
me out to dinner.
Is intelligent falling what Ronaldo does in the penalty area?
No, it's a kind of way of trying to demonstrate what scientists mean by theory. Because, as you probably know, they have in America this idea that it's equivalent to teach intelligent design as it is to teach the theory of evolution. Because they say, well, the theory of evolution is only a theory, so why can't we suggest our theory? Which is a misunderstanding of what a scientist means by theory. That's what...
You've lost me.
Yeah, well, you've heard of the theory of evolution.
Yes.
And you've heard of intelligent design?
No.
Well, in America, religious people who decide that evolution is contrary to what the Bible says about the creation, they want children to believe that all creation was made by an intelligent being, i.e. God.
The universe is designed by something.
Yeah, and their name for it, rather than saying just believe the Bible is intelligent design. They say
right.
it's the theory of evolution, so why can't we have a theory of intelligent design? And they can both be taught in the same way. And all I'm getting at is that actually theory has a rather specific meaning in science. It's not the same as guess. It's not even the same as hypothesis. This is what the OED calls a theory, a statement of what are held to be general laws, principles, or causes of something known or observed. I.e., that's not a guess. The theory of evolution is, as far as any biologist or zoologist would say, is true. I mean, it is supported by facts.
So what was intelligent falling? It was...
Intelligent falling is saying, well, Newton had a theory of gravity, but it was overturned by Einstein's theory of gravity, so why can't we suggest our theory, which is intelligent falling?
Isn't the point partly that different theories are supported by different amounts of evidence? So, for example, David Icke has a theory that the royal family are all 7-foot green lizards in 6-foot human skin suits.
Yes.
And he doesn't have a lot of evidence for that theory. Whereas the sort of evolution is supported by a lot of evidence. And if you want to question a theory, then you should do so by challenging its evidence rather than by...
The intelligent design believers, in America, what do they think they put in their cars?
It is a problem. I mean, it's a hard position to be a fundamentalist. On the one hand, you have to forgive people, on the other hand, you have to take their eye out. Which is a bit difficult to know which one you're supposed to do at any one moment.
Well, if Michael Winner's around...
Yeah.
Yes.
to make a decision.
I've got this fantasy of Michael Winner sitting down saying, oh, it's Friday, what shall I do? I know, I watch QI. Joe Brand's on. She's my favourite.
And the disappointment when he sees you being...
So he won't be disappointed.
No, perhaps he won't. Perhaps he won't. So there we are, yes. The fact is, evolution and gravity may be theories, but they work perfectly well in practice. Describe the symptoms of either drapetomania or diesthesia ethiopica. Who the hell is that?
I don't know, but that's what the girl's thinking as well.
They're all thinking I would, aren't they? I mean, it's nothing to do, I have to say, with Gregory House. We're in the 1850s, just before the Civil War, which is a clue. Drapetomania was a diagnosis of a quite inexplicable outbreak of a sort of mental failing that happened amongst the slave population.
Oh, were they singing?
No.
Were they singing cheerful songs?
Even more inexplicable. This was a doctor called Samuel Cartwright who coined the phrase drapetomania to explain the mental disorder displayed by slaves who wanted to run away.
Right.
Surely.
What? I know. He said it was as much a disease of the mind as any other species of mental alienation, and much more curable. He thought it was caused by slaves being given too much authority and freedom.
Do you know what? I think my husband's got drapetomania. He's always having a crack at running away.
Shackles.
Shackles
is the answer. That's right.
He's got a massive bungee rope.
Yeah. He claimed that slaves should have the desire to run away beaten out of them.
Oh, yeah,
I mean,
that's always the answer with your slaves, wasn't it?
Was that both? Pat, what was the first one? Drapetomania.
Yeah.
And the second one was what?
The second one I'll tell you about. This is diesthesia ethiopica. It's characterised by an aversion to doing slave labour. Again, what a peculiar thing. Other symptoms include rascality and not taking care of property. His description was to put the patient to some kind of hard work in the open air and sunshine.
You do get quite a lot of these weird diagnoses, though, even now. In Russia and in China, they had political mania, which was convincing your colleagues and friends of the need for political change. And in China, political mania has got symptoms like carrying banners, shouting slogans and expressing views on important domestic and international political matters.
Yes, you're right, I know. The Russians famously, through the 60s and 70s, had the psychology sort of turned backwards, and paranoia was defined as a yearning for justice.
Truth and justice are commonly found in the personality of the paranoid delusional, I think is what...
That's the phrase they used.
Yeah.
Well, there is a book which is well known to anybody who studies mental health, which is called the DSM, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, which goes through various editions.
A lot of it is cock.
Well, and indeed, a lot of it is cock, but unfortunately it's very important cock because, for example, so if you're suing your employer because you claim you have a medical condition and whatever, it is the DSM which defines whatever supposed mental disorder you have, and they go through current editions. We're at 4 at the moment, aren't we? They're going to be...
It's coming up for 5.
Coming up for 5 in 2013. And people submit to it their idea of a condition, and some of them are accepted and some of them aren't. And we have up some for you which are under consideration or might have been suggested. And I wanted to see if you can tell what they are. Sluggish cognitive tempo disorder.
Can't dance. Is that just people
Guilty
who
feet
can't...
have got no rhythm.
Yeah.
Being a student.
Being a student, basically. I mean, your Daily Mail journalists would naturally write off, as they do almost any mental condition, as a shabby excuse for a character flaw. But in this case, when you read the descriptions of the symptoms of sluggish cognitive tempo disorder, the basic word you come up with is laziness. It is basically laziness. Relational disorder.
Unpleasantness.
Yeah, an inability to get on.
Ryan Giggs.
Sorry?
Well,
Ryan Giggs has got that.
Yeah, Brian Giggs is not getting on with people.
He gets on with some people, but they're usually married to other people.
Yes. So, anyway, negativistic personality disorder.
Not being very nice.
Well, it's being negativistic about something, whining.
Jeremy
basically.
Paxman.
Whining and complaining. Intermittent explosive disorder.
That's flatulence.
Well, it would, but as this is the DSM, basically adult tantrums, people who lose their temper very, very... And the point is, one can laugh at these, but there are some things that are obviously real, that produce terrible conditions, mental conditions, and that is well known. And then, somewhere along the line, there are things to do with concentration disorders and compulsion disorders, which seem so limited that you think, is that worth putting in a book? And do you need special treatment for that? Where do you draw the line, I suppose? I'm asking. Doctor, do tell us.
Partly it's because some people want to be pathologised and have a label.
Yes.
And sometimes it's about flogging a treatment. I mean, female sexual dysfunction, for example, started being pushed at the time that various companies were trying to get licences for things like Viagra for the 50% of the population who are unlucky enough not to have a penis. And along with that...
Joe's got loads of penises, but they're all in a drawer.
But FSD was about medicalising it and saying that desire is a matter of clitoral blood flow imaging and nitric oxide molecules in your body rather
I think that might have been the most disgusting thing I've ever heard. Clitoral blood flow imaging.
.com.
No, that is a dirty book.
Yes. Well, no, that's true. I'm pretty sure that if I had been born later, I would have been diagnosed with having attention deficit disorder and been given, what is it, Ritalin, one of those drugs. As it was, I was called a tosser and expelled from lots of schools. Now, part of me thinks I was a tosser. I couldn't concentrate. I was extremely aggravating to all those around me, and I was expelled from schools, and I was a damn nuisance. But it's probably true that I did have something in my brain was different to others. And some people will always want to see that as a moral character thing, which is under your control. And they will do it rigidly and refuse to accept that there's a medical condition.
But the thing is,
for it.
it's not only moral, is it? It's social and cultural as well.
Yeah.
You know, because 50 years ago, people who were gay were being given electric shocks or whatever they were to cure them of that illness. So as history moves on, you medicalise different sorts of behaviour, don't you?
Yeah. Well, there you are. That's it. Some psychologists seem to have disorder-naming compulsion disorder, which is not exactly fatal, but who was the last British monarch to be deliberately killed?
Was it one of the ones that got beheaded?
No. You've managed to avoid saying Charles I, who most people would
Yeah,
think...
only because I couldn't bloody remember what...
It happened in Norfolk. So where would that likely be if it was a monarch?
Sandringham.
At Sandringham.
Oh, it's the Queen's dad.
No, not the Queen's dad, the Queen's grandfather.
Right.
This is King George V, who was the grandfather of our current monarch. There he is, looking spookily like his cousin Nicholas Tsar Alexander. And it's attested story by the man who actually did it. It's quite extraordinary that it isn't better known, really. In 1936, he was at Sandringham, feeling unwell. On the 15th of January, he retired to his bedroom. By the 20th, he was comatose and clearly dying, but still clinging to life. And this presented his doctor, a man called Lord Dawson, a bit of a problem. In Dawson's opinion, the world at large would be better served by hearing of the King's death in the morning papers rather than by him lingering on a little bit longer and it being in what he sniffily referred to as the evening journals. So he decided to force the issue. He wrote a very famous bulletin on the back of a menu card, which was telephoned to the BBC. The life of the king is moving peacefully to its close. He then went up to the bedroom, and this, according to his own diary, is what he did. I therefore decided to determine the end and injected morphia, 3/4 of a grain, and shortly afterwards cocaine, 1 grain.
Lucky old king.
Into the distended jugular vein. I did it myself because it was obvious that Sister B, the king's nurse, was disturbed by the procedure.
So I injected Sister B as well.
But essentially, isn't that what a speedball is, isn't it? He's basically gone the same way as John Belushi. It's, he gave him a speedball of morphia and cocaine.
And he told the family, did he? Or?
Well, he wrote it in his diary, and this was revealed in 1986.
Treason.
Well, it was quite extraordinary. And the weird thing is, being a Lord, he was in the House of Lords, and not long afterwards he voted against euthanasia in a euthanasia debate. But he said, I'm not opposed to euthanasia per se, not having just killed the king, not surprising. I just felt it should be left to the discretion of doctors, right. Not anybody else. But there we are.
Or a doctor.
Or myself, basically. Now for a bizarre illness. What would you call a man who eats literally everything?
Winner.
Well, everything, like pens and...
Yes, basically, yeah, polyphagism. It's also known as pica, an excessive appetite, often for non-nutritious substances, coal, clay, chalk, nuts, bolts, batteries, soil, and so on. It's a very exaggerated version of what can sometimes happen in pregnancy. I don't know. Did you get any weird appetite things when you were pregnant?
Yeah, I ate a bit less.
Some animals suffer from it. In horses, it's called depraved appetite. But the most extreme example we can come across was a man called Tarare, who was a Frenchman in the late 18th century, and he lived a shortish life. I mean, he was abandoned by his family as a child because they just couldn't afford the food that he ate. And after working as a street entertainer, swallowing stones and live animals, he became a soldier. And they decided to test his appetite, and he obliged, and he ate a meal intended for 15 people in a single sitting. He tore apart and ate, without chewing, live cats, snakes, lizards, and puppies. And so they thought maybe he'd be a useful spy, so they gave him things to swallow to go behind enemy. They were at war with Prussia. But he was caught first time and...
He'd be a good spy. Why would he? He'd rather draw attention to himself, though, eating everything.
But they thought you could just swallow some box with military secrets in it, basically. So that when he was searched, he would have nothing. That was their theory, anyway. So he was then put on a diet in a military hospital, and he would scavenge for offal in gutters. He would escape from the hospital in rubbish heaps outside butchers' shops.
He attempted to... offal in gutters?
Yes, and outside butchers' shops.
You know. Oh, I see. What, just someone had gone, oh, don't look at that liver. And...
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And he attempted to drink the blood of other patients and eat the corpses in the hospital morgue.
You know who's like that, don't you? You need to say it anymore, do I?
Anyway, yeah, he was eventually ejected from the hospital under suspicion of having eaten a toddler. And then he died... A toddler, a little baby, a child, an infant, yes. Which is against the law in France.
Yeah, they're picky, the French, for their laws. Really fussy.
They gave an autopsy. Anyway, he had a belly so loose he could wrap the loose folds of skin around his waist. He sweated constantly and stank to such a degree that he could not be endured within a distance of 20 paces. At table, his eyes would become bloodshot and a visible vapour...
I'm becoming increasingly attracted to you.
A visible vapour would rise from his body when he ate.
He sounds bloody marvellous.
Despite this...
Surely someone's going to make a film about it.
He didn't gain weight or
Colin
vomit.
Firth.
And he seemed perfectly sane.
He didn't gain weight.
No, that's...
On the eat-everything diet. He didn't gain weight.
Well, you've got a whole cat and a dog inside. They'll be probably eating everything else, huh?
Yes, that's true. Like the little old lady who swallowed the fly, yeah.
There was a diet pill like that, where people would eat
tapeworm.
tapeworm egg and then wait until they got to their ideal weight, and then they'd take the helminthicide that would kill the tapeworm, and they'd poo out the worm,
Yeah.
and then get on
I wish they
nice
still made
and
that.
slim.
Yeah. And in his autopsy, you'll be pleased to know, also revealed an enlarged liver and gallbladder, enormous stomach covered in ulcers and oozing pus. So that's nice. So time to hand your test results in. And let's talk about your sleepiness here. Now, we've got Ben here first. I'll tell you what the questions are. Basically, you fill in how likely you are to doze off in the following situations according to the following scale. All right? And the various situations are sitting and reading, watching TV, sitting inactive in a public place, e.g. theatre or meeting, travelling as a passenger in a car for an hour, lying down to rest in the afternoon, sitting and talking to someone, sitting quietly after a lunch without alcohol, in a car while stopped for a few minutes in traffic. Well, Ben here scores 6, and you'll be pleased to know there that 7 to 8 is average. 0 to 6 indicates you get sufficient sleep. I don't know that my taxes are going properly if a doctor gets sufficient sleep. I pay you to be utterly overworked and underslept.
I thought this was a confidential medical...
Oh, sorry, Darren. It's very healthy results. This is Joe Marlon Brando. You've answered 0 to everything.
Yeah.
So you really do sleep enough. You never fall asleep during the
I
day.
never fall asleep anywhere, no.
That's fantastic. Andy, sitting and reading 1, watching TV 3. Your total, which you haven't bothered to do, thank you so much. 3, 4,
I got too tired.
9, 10. Your total is 14.
Yes.
Alan has answered 3 to almost everything except sitting and talking to someone, thank goodness.
Yeah. Don't sleep then.
Yeah. And you score 19.
Yeah.
Wow.
I sit and read a book, I will fall asleep immediately.
Now, well, anyway, so there you are. You get sufficient sleep, Ben. The rest of you, I'm sorry to say, 7 to 8 is average. Well, anything above 9 indicates you should seek the advice of a sleep specialist without delay.
All right.
Yes.
OK, I'll get on to it straight away.
Well, there you are. So now, drop your trousers. It's time for a dose of general ignorance. Fingers on, beepers, please. Why shouldn't you sleep with a dog? Yes.
He won't respect you in the morning, will he? It's against the law, isn't it?
Well, I don't know. I don't mean sleep with in the sexual sense. I mean literally share a bed with. I'm afraid it's really terribly unhealthy. Quite a lot of plague, amazingly. Good old bubonic plague, especially in the southern states of America.
Not in this country, surely.
Not at the moment. We seem to be OK in this country, but...
Because dogs are wearing those anti-plague hats.
Yes.
Can I just say, apropos of nothing,
Yes.
what hideous pillowcases.
I bet,
From the 70s, that picture.
I bet they're that kind of brushed nylon where you can catch your fingernails on it.
Brentford nylon.
Actually, the diseases you get off animals are often worse than the diseases you get off people, because diseases that live in humans can't kill you off instantly and universally, because otherwise the disease would die out. They need you to carry on sort of going to work and sneezing on the bus and scratching your arse and preparing food and all the other things that you do to transmit stuff. But something that lives on a dog, it doesn't care if it kills off a dead-end host like a human.
Because that's not what it's bred to live. That's not
that's
part of
how
its
it gets
normal life
around.
cycle.
Yeah.
Anyway, letting dogs and cats share your bed can cause all manner of problems. So now I'm having a panic attack. What do you recommend? Yes.
A paper bag.
Yes, a good old paper bag. No longer
that not recommended
No, it
anymore?
isn't. No. Nor indeed the other standby, take a deep breath. Both of those are now considered rather
Pull
bad
yourself
ideas.
together.
Pull yourself together is probably okay.
Yes.
I think you can manage that. Doctor, I think I'm a pair of curtains.
Slap her, she's hysterical.
Yes, that's a fine one. She had, I think we
She
can...
had good reason
Yeah.
to be
I think she
hysterical.
did,
Yeah,
because
she did.
because
Yeah.
Jack was not behaving normally, was
No.
he? No, he was being a little odd. But no, there's a new treatment called capnometry-assisted respiratory training, or CART. Encourages people to take shallow breaths rather than deep breaths.
You want to avoid blowing off too much carbon dioxide, don't you?
Yeah, that's the thing. It's because you're hyperventilating, apparently, you're getting rid of too much CO2, and the idea was that if you do it in the bag, then you're breathing back in the CO2. But apparently this is now not considered a very good idea. It's dangerous and should be retired, is the apparent current medical opinion.
Quite hard to find a paper bag, isn't it?
It
Still going
does.
to try it on Winner.
Yeah. And avoid, if you can, fatty and spicy foods. So, now, I'm feeling extremely angry. What should I do?
Calm down, dear.
That's very good. You're quite right. What's the best thing to do when you're angry?
Have a cigarette.
No, I'm not sure that would be medically recommended.
Lie down in a darkened room, think about something nice. Puppies.
Yeah.
Those are all good suggestions. The suggestion that I'm glad you didn't make is let it out. There was this idea that if you got very angry, you should punch a punch bag and shout and let it go. And they've done some experiments again, and it turned out that those who let out their anger became over time more aggressive. And the hypothesis is that blowing off steam may reduce psychological stress in the short term, but it acts as a kind of reward mechanism, reinforcing aggressive behaviour, because you feel good when you then let it out again. So maybe it's better to bottle it up. Be British, in other words. Stiff upper lip. Yeah? Don't make a scene, don't make a fuss.
Don't make a bloody fuss.
And above all, avoid fatty and spicy. Yes, also, according to psychologists at the University of California, Santa Barbara, it's best to make decisions when you're angry, which goes, again, rather against what you might think. It seems that anger will actually, and there again, it's a hypothesis, that anger is designed to motivate people to take action. It actually helps people take the right action.
Buying shoes.
Buying shoes when you're angry.
Make sure you're really livid when you go in the shop.
I want my shoes! I think
Which pair would you like? Those! I'm really pleased with these.
There you are. Apparently letting your anger out just makes matters worse. So, if you want to wash the bacteria off your hands, what temperature should the water be?
Killing bacteria, I would say it needs to be 30, 40.
Well, the point is, in order to kill the bacteria, the water would have to be far too hot for you to bear it. It would have to be about 80 degrees centigrade. It's nothing to do with the temperature, in fact. It is to do with, as you would know as a doctor, it's actually the vigorousness of the scrubbing action.
Actually, for proper infection control, we should all be naked below the elbow.
Oh, really? Short sleeves is the answer?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, which you do see in some doctors nowadays, actually. I've noticed that. Is that now the norm?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, that's interesting.
I like those taps they have, you know, the elbow
Oh,
tap.
yes,
Yeah, yeah.
that's it.
I quite get for those for home.
But do, above all, avoid fatty and spicy food. Now, how many portions of fruit and veg should you eat each day?
Oh, now, in Japan, they say 9.
That's the thing. It's different all over the world, it seems. The 5 is being chosen in Britain, basically, because they think that's basically the most they can persuade the British to eat. And we are the most reluctant to eat
There's
anything.
no way they'll eat any of it.
Anything green is
Say
just
5.
repulsive to us. But Denmark says 6, France 10. Canada, it's between 5 and 10.
Somebody just went, oh!
Yes. Oh, dear.
Scotland, it's 1.
Scotland. I know. Supposedly it's 7 for women and...
Exactly, Haribo's
7 for
count
women.
in Scotland.
That's a vegetable. Star mix.
I had a bag of dolly mixtures.
I really wish my fridge looked like that. Does anyone's
stay like
fridge
that?
ever look like that?
Certainly not mine, no, I have to say. I can't see a single pork pie in there.
No.
That, to me, is no fridge
I have a lot of veg in
Do you
my
like
fridge, I
pork
must say.
pies? I love pork pies.
I like pork pies, but I find you start a pork pie, you think, I really like this pork pie. 2/3 the way through, I start to go off it. and I don't know why.
Oh.
Is that to do with me?
Send it to me, the rest of it.
Yeah.
You've got
Email it.
complex pork pie avoidance.
Yes, you have. It's actually rather staggering there are any British people left alive on the world. It's just amazing. We all eat fatty, spicy food and certainly don't get our 5 a day. And lastly, here's something every teenage boy should know. What is it that burns when you set fire to your farts?
You want someone to say methane, don't you?
I'll say it.
Oh, thank you, Andy. No, I really thought it was methane. Yes, everybody thinks it's methane. No, most human beings do not produce methane in extrusion. It seems that we produce about 3 pints of wind a day. Released...
Pints?
Yes, pints. It's measured in pints. Released in 10 to 15 individual episodes.
You get a box set as well. Best.
Oh, you can have a feature-length episode.
So, pyroflatulence is the practice of igniting these episodes. Can lead to serious burns, so don't try it at home, everybody. But methane in the body results from microbes called methanogens. But only about a third of humans have methanogens among their gut flora. So no one knows exactly why. That appears to be genetically determined. And a 2009 study by Arizona State University showed that methane producers are more efficient at converting their undigested food into fat reserves, which bluntly put means fat people fart more. The major components of flatus... The major components are all odourless. The distinctive aroma is caused by skatol, indole and hydrogen sulfide. During the Great Plague of London, doctors recommended patients store their farts in a jar and then, when they were feeling unwell, smell them. And apparently this would help. Anyway, it's usually hydrogen, in fact, that's lit.
But as I always say, better out than in.
Definitely.
Bit like Simon Cowell in a lifeboat.
And now, the complications set in as we look at the final scores. It's very exciting because in first place, with a very positive and a very thrillingly impressive 8 points, is Andy Hamilton.
Oh.
And in second place with 5 points is Dr. Ben Goldacre. But by no means the sickest patient on the ward with only -7 is Alan Davies. I'm afraid it's get the mortuary trolley ready at -24, Joe Brand. That's all from us tonight, so it's good night from Ben, Andy, Joe, Alan and me. And I leave you with this heartwarming tale from America. In 1981, the mayor of Springfield, Illinois, suffered a heart attack during a council meeting. The council voted to wish him a speedy recovery by a margin of 19 votes to 18. Good night.
Unanswerable questions and nagging problems addressed tomorrow over on BBC One in Ask Rod Gilbert from 11:10. And the comedy continues here on BBC HD this evening too, with a behind-the-scenes look at Life's Too Short. Next.